And we're live for the latest edition of Nick Valencia News. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the show. Welcome. I'm Nick Valencia, host of this show. I didn't think it would take off. And so maybe I might have named it something different because I think repeating my name sounds a little, a little arrogant. I don't know. But we're going with it right now as it's the title of the show. Whatever. We're not here to talk about the title of the show. We're here to talk about our guests here. I'm feeling locked in today. I'm feeling pretty good. Earlier today, well, wait. Hey, Jason. Hey, everybody. Alejandro Chavez is already here. Our guest is already here. We've got a minute to the start of the show, and we already got Alejandro Chavez in the building. We'll join him in just a little bit here. And we also have Joel Cavazos. He's going to join us. We'll give people here a little minute or two to join, and then we'll get the show kicked off here. Hope you guys are having a good Tuesday. Hope everyone's day is going well. We had a lot of people in and out of the house today. We're getting some work done on our house. We got new roof, new gutters, the drama that unfolded here at Casa Valencia over the course of the last couple of weeks with somebody literally breaking into our home in the middle of the day led to some added security measures. And I think I still have the idea of doing a podcast, a crime podcast, because it was like 8 homes that were fully broken into, 16, 17 homes that were targeted in the area. And that's kind of the atmosphere, the backdrop of what we've been dealing with here while we're trying to launch this new show. Hey, thank you, Serena. I, among other things, really love plants and flowers. So I try to get some fresh flowers every week and throw that, throw that behind us here. And then that, of course, is the National Emmy that we won in 2021, part of a team at CNN that won for the coverage of the death of George Floyd. So while it's awesome to have received that sort of recognition, thanks, Fergal. Thank you so much. It's so wonderful to see you here, man. Well, it's awesome to have gotten that recognition, looking at that national Emmy with literally the name, the death of George Floyd. It's kind of like part of what we're, some of the conversations I had earlier today, part of the people that I'm trying to reach are those of you who have turned away from the news. People that have stopped watching mainstream legacy news, people that maybe just don't really want to watch the news because it's so sad. And I have found myself, and I've talked a lot about the emotion of covering these stories, really trying to bring these personalized stories of what's happening in our Latino community. And it's just heavy, and I want to speak on that. I just want to speak out what's going on in my head because if we launched this platform to be rigorously honest. And so in the spirit of being rigorously honest, I could not sleep last night after coming back from the home of Spanish language journalist Mario Guevara. Some of you guys know the story of Mario Guevara. Mario has been in custody for more than 70 days now. He was detained at an Atlanta rally, the No Kings protest. You remember that happened in mid-June, I believe. And he was live streaming the event. And as things got a little bit more animated, the police ushered everybody to the sidewalk. They gave sort of some conflicting commands. If you go back and watch the video, Mario got caught up in that. And it appeared as though he was even sort of targeted in that. Some of the context that you need to know about Mario Guevara is that he is an institution. He's a force to be reckoned with. He is not just a journalist, but he's a connector. And he is an informer in the very true sense of the word. He informs the Spanish community here, the Spanish language community, the undocumented community of ICE raids, where ICE agents happen to be, where they're setting up, where there is a potential or possible raid. He has a lot of law enforcement sources. So Mario has helped a segment of the population. I'm sure that there are some of you who are listening to this out there and hold that against him because his family certainly thinks that's part of the reason why he was targeted. That in a time like right now, when the voice of specifically Mario Guevara is needed the most, he is absent and being held, some would say without cause at this point, for more than 70 days. When you hear critics talk about do it the right way, go through the processes of the right way, Mario Guevara went through it the right way. 12 years ago, he petitioned to be an American citizen. He took that path. His mother is a U.S. citizen. First, he petitioned through her. Then more recently, he petitioned through his eldest son. He's been going through the immigration process as long as I've known him. Think about that. This is a man who wakes up, prays every day, pays his taxes, contributes to America, moves in good faith. He's not a criminal, and yet he's being treated like one. And one of the things that made me so upset in talking to his family is that his daughter, Catherine, invited me into their home, and she talked about how he's been shuffled around like this pawn to 5 different immigration facilities and a federal jail. And it was in Atlanta federal jail where he was put in general population and he was extorted. People recognized him. People came up to him. Others, bad actors, took notice that people were coming up to him. He's has a lot of fame and notoriety in the community. Some of those ICE detainees are being held in federal prison. He ran into some of those people. Some of them came up to him. Bad actors took notice. Then they approached him in his cell, passed him a cell phone, and on it said $60. His family paid the $60 extortion fee. It didn't stop at $60, though. The next ask was double. It was $120. Think about this. This guy is a man who has done it the right way, got caught up in the system, is being held wrongfully in ICE detention. A man who is away from his children, who is away from his wife, who has been in custody the whole time that we've been doing our independent journalism project, who has been extorted, whose life has literally been put in danger, who has been held in solitary confinement in Folkestone, Georgia, which he calls better than some of the other places that he's been. This is how we're treating the best of us in this country right now. And so we have a story coming out on Monday. We post new original videos every Monday. We spent some time with him. And in a surprise to us, while we were spending time with Mario's family, his daughter told us that she was alerted to a surprise habeas corpus bond hearing. So on Wednesday, tomorrow morning, Mario Gavada is going to go before an immigration judge, and there is a small chance, a possibility, however small, that he could be released after more than 70 days. Now, we know in Trump's America, nothing is straightforward. We know when it comes to immigration, especially, nothing is straightforward. And so his family is going to drive the 5 hours to Brunswick, the Brunswick area, and is going to go be with their hero. Go be with their father, their husband, their provider. Somebody who is still moving in good faith in custody. The only time his daughter teared up the entire time, she's so strong. She's so strong. I hope that if something like that ever happens to me, my daughter is as strong as Catherine is. And the only time she teared up throughout this entire interview with her was when she talked about how what he's doing behind bars is equal to what he was doing outside. There is a man he met there, his peer from El Salvador, and the man has no money, has no way of getting in contact with his family in Maryland. Mario Gavada paid for that man's family to come down from Maryland in a surprise visit to his friend, to his peer. When his family puts money on his commissary, he uses that sometimes to pay for clean shirts for his friends that he's made in there. This is the kind of person that is being held right now in Trump's America. Jesus. I can't believe I'm talking about that, man, but I wanted to get that off my chest. That was a heavy experience. And I just could not sleep last night to think about what his family is going through, to think about what we're doing to people in this country that are moving in good faith. That's hard to reconcile. And so this is why we talk about it. We come here. I don't want it to be sad. You know, there is some hope. The family does have hope. They're so filled with hope by the attention that this has received. They really believe in faith. And you've heard me say this. They move the same way. Things happen for us, not to us. And right now they think that God has put their father in this situation because he's strong enough to handle it. And that others like me, maybe you might break under these circumstances. So anyway, let's get into today's discussion. We've got a lot to talk about. Our guest is already here in the chat. We have Alejandro Chavez joining us today. Alejandro Chavez, famous last name. You guys might actually know his work. He's a community organizer. He's an activist. He is one of the grandchildren of César Chávez, and he's got an interesting take about why Democrats are losing the Latino men specifically. So let's get Alejandro. I know I'm going to figure this out. This is like our 8th show or 9th show, and I always have to come on here and drag out the show and fill dead air, Alejandro, and stare directly into the camera. And it's so weird and awkward. Alejandro Chavez. Okay. And then here we go. You're Ale J. Chavez. We'll invite you in to the show. Hey, Kenny, Quinoa Tonight is in the building. My Eagle Rock family has shown up in such a big way. I'm so stoked to see you here in the chat, Kenny. Oh my God. While we wait for Alejandro to show up here, thank you so much for being here. Kenny was like my best friend in senior year when I was homecoming king. I remember like going over Avenue 51 Hill, and Kenny was like, we were talking about, oh my God, I hope homecoming king happens. There's Alejandro. Back when my biggest problems were whether or not I was going to be homecoming king. And now we've got to talk about whether or not we're being persecuted as a community here, you know? Welcome to the show, Alejandro. How are you, brother?
I'm doing well. And of course, I had downloaded the app on my phone because all I do is apps on my phone. I don't do very much on my computer. I do work on my computer. You know what I mean? I
Yeah.
spreadsheets. And so I had it open on my computer. So, to use this, you have to download the app. I was like, it looks like I'm using my phone.
So I think I got to tell my guests that I go off my phone. The cool thing, and I was telling you yesterday, the workflow of what we have, everything that I do is off my phone. So the
Yeah,
stories that you guys see off this iPhone, the live shows off the iPhone, the calls to sources, the articles, all of that. I mean, basically I
absolutely.
use my laptop for work stuff like you,
Yep, exactly.
Um,
And even then, there's some things, what I found, and for anybody who's like me who finds it easier to say things, there's times where I just open up Google Docs and I talk. Your phone,
yes.
microphone, dictator, and then I sit down and I edit it and I break it up and I redefine it. But I'll sit down for 40 minutes, get down a whole thought or a whole proposal, and then sit down and break it down afterwards. And that would have normally taken me 2 hours to get it down, but just sitting on my car or my phone, whatever I am, just talking to my phone. So it's a great tool for dictation as well.
Is that a Latino thing, or is that a generational thing? Because like I find myself sending voice memos, and like the kids are like, "What are you doing? Why are you sending voice memos?" I'm like, "Because it's easier to just send a voice memo than it is to hammer out a 500 word text." You know?
Right. And I don't know about you, but I remember my mom would leave herself voicemails on the recorder. She would call from work. Hey, we got to do this. And then she'd get home and be like, oh, So I think as you got generational, it changed, right? It adapts to the different version of things like that.
Well, this is a good segue to talk about your family, because we know who your grandfather is, Cesar Chavez, legendary civil rights leader, farm rights worker. Um, Tell us how you're connected. So how are you the grandson of Cesar Chavez?
So my father is his oldest son.
Got it. Oh,
So if
wow.
you ever saw the
Okay.
movie, if you ever saw the movie,
Yes.
César Chávez, the golfer. I mean, that actually does play golf. So, like, yes, very much so. That
The
Fernando
son
is
who
my
took
father.
off, right? The son who sort of tried to
Yep.
forge his own path.
Yeah. So it's pretty accurate. My father was raised, at later on in his life was raised because of the difficulties of being when the growers' children were talking, parents were talking problems they're having, and they go to school. There's only one person who's going to school. It's him, my father. And everyone
Yeah.
knew his father was, quote, the troublemaker. So it made life difficult for him.
He got a lot of collateral hits. He took a lot of
And being the,
collateral damage.
and being the oldest, it's kind of, you have children yourself. Sometimes you're like, okay, we just learned a little bit more. We learned a little bit more. And
Oh,
it
yeah.
doesn't, it's not about making you a better parent. It's making you more aware of what's happening. And I think that, that's some of the things, and it was a time frame, right? It was a different time. It wasn't odd for grandparents to raise children for a variety of reasons. So I think some of it is a combination of the movement, the work my grandfather was doing, but also just a time period in life where some people's children were raised by their parents, or even tios and tias that were not really tios and tias. They were family friends that were just older, but we call them tios and tias. Your primos
It,
that aren't really the
your
primos.
play uncles, right? Is it wrong is it wrong for me then to think, Alejandro, that, because for me, my takeaway from watching that and the history is that the movement or a movement comes with a cost. And the cost sometimes is right in front of us, right? It's like I think about how giant of a man that your grandfather was and how he couldn't be everything to everyone. He couldn't even be there in some ways as a father for his son. And that was the collateral. Am I wrong to think of it that way? Did you see that at all? Did your dad ever talk about that?
Well, my dad never really talked about it as much, but I do think, as a parent that does this work, and I think you can appreciate where a birthday where you're like, I was going to be there, and then the government did something, and the next thing you know, you're on a plane, a graduation that you're like, look, it's the sixth grade graduation promotion thing. Like, I get it. I'll be there for high school, kindergarten. You're like, I get it. I really want to be there. And at the time, my significant other at the time, my wife at the time, she was able to go to a lot of those things. So the child was still able to have it. But whether you're in the movement or whether you're a reporter, a community organizer, or you are just a parent who is active in your community, PTAs and so forth, there are times that you miss games. There are things you miss. And I think uh, as a child, you learn more about it later and appreciate it later in life. And that's part of your development. That is part of you. So I do think that that's it.
I
But I
love
think
that.
it was something you always kind of see, especially, like I said, in our line of work, where we know that, the moment dictates what we do. We can't always do it. If a war breaks out, you could be on a plane, you're out of the country. You could be
I
on
mean, it
5.
happened to me one Christmas. My daughter's first Christmas, Jacqueline McCall, I believe. She was one of the girls that died in a Customs and Border Protection custody. She was 8 years
Yeah.
old. It happened on Christmas. Next thing I know, I'm on a plane. It was Christmas Eve. Next thing I know, I'm in El Paso, waking up on Christmas in El Paso, right? And so I think about that. Like my daughter doesn't, I don't want her to know some of the stuff that I've covered, but hopefully she'll be proud of it, Like, how is it to hear the stories because you probably didn't get as much time with your grandfather as you wanted to, right? How
So, I
how
mean, I
is
was
it to
about
sort
15 when he passed away. So I
Oh,
was, I
you were
was a little,
15. Oh
yeah,
my
I
God.
carried the passport. Yeah.
That's wonderful. So tell us how he has inspired. I guess I have so many questions. What I want to start with is like, what do you think he would think of right now? And how are you using his legacy right now to stand up for our community?
Well, I think, look, there's a lot, there's a lot happening right now that he would be part of. And I don't think it would just be one section. I think it would be the stuff going on in labor. I think it would be, as we've discussed, some of the challenges happening in organizing within the movement and the contribution that many groups fail to give to the movement, but will take for themselves. It's always been almost like a penny, right? Leave a penny, take a penny, right?
Yeah.
Take a little bit from the movement, but you leave a little back. You leave a volunteer, you leave a training, you leave a success, something. And it seems like a lot more pennies are being taken out than being left.
Mm,
And I think there's some of that. I think, I think that there's a lot of people that come after his stance on immigration, understanding that it wasn't their status that his challenge was. It was the fact that they were being used as scabs
that's
against
scabs.
their own brothers and workers. It had nothing to do with their status. And that's why he also helped pave the way for what are they doing? What was it in '86? They did uh, what is it when they give
H-1
everyone amnesty?
visas.
Yeah,
Amnesty.
amnesty, right? Like he worked and advocated for that, and like so. I think that it's easy to say here, but realizing that it was all about the worker. If those workers had been anyone, and he was doing it with workers who were U.S. citizens, because it was the scab, not the status.
I'm so glad you cleared that up because that's the pushback that I got. And I was in Delano. You saw the reporting. I met your cousin, Natalie Fragoso, who is a force in her own right. She's taken the fight from the fields to the classroom and education. And I
And I
got
love that her
pushback
and
by,
Jay are at the same school. I love it.
yes, it's
He's
so
the football
beautiful. They're
coach,
just like
and she's like,
handsome
it's like
couple. So
yeah,
cool.
it's like a TV. It's like a Chicano TV show on one of those stations, right?
It is awesome to see the work that they're doing, and some of the pushback that I got for the reporting was that didn't you know that her grandfather was against undocumented? They say illegal immigrants, right? But undocumented immigrants, and it was like it was what they were being used as. It wasn't necessarily their status, and so I'm so grateful that you cleared up that misconception, man. Like, What do you think your grandfather would be? I just want you to continue to speak on that. Yeah, not to cut
Yeah.
you off.
Look, I think that his work was, he would even say it, right? Like the strike and the boycotts were never about the grapes and the lettuce. It was always about the worker. And I think sometimes we've forgotten that as organizers. We've forgotten that these metrics, the canvases, all of that is not what this is about. This is about identifying the individual needs and bringing them into the fold of what's happening. It's the individual. There's a story of my grandfather where they ask him, how was he able to reach so many people? And he tells them, I talked to one person at a time, and I went and spoke to another person, and I went and spoke to another person. And you look, you've done this work, and I've given speeches and do this, and I've spoken to groups of 10, I've spoken to groups of 1,000. No matter how many it is, there's always only one that actually kind of gets it, right? That you see that goes on and does more, inspired, if that's the term you use, motivated, uh, or just seeing what's out there. And I think that no matter what we do, that's all we can hope for in our work.
That
We could
that
speak
is
to thousands, but it's got to be one, and we've got to be able to move just one, and that's the success. There is no silver bullet to moving 1,000 people, except one by one.
But that's the characteristic trait that comes in a leader, that's within somebody like your
Okay.
family legacy or like others that we see out there who are leading this charge. I feel like it's within me, and not to sound corny, but your grandfather inspired me during varsity football. And my dad, who was a Chicano from 51st and Western, would scream, "Si se puede," after
Yeah.
every touchdown I scored, right? And it was so wonderful and so inspiring to just sort of feel like I could help carry that on and think that if I just inspire one person through like playing sports, then I've done my job, right? And I think that way when I'm reporting. I think if I focus on the individual, like one of the great secrets of broadcasting that I learned is that I learned it from the old USC radio guy, Pete Arbogast. He was like a long time USD football guy. And he was legendary in the radio community. And I was like, how do you do it, man? How do you keep the attention of so many people, especially without pictures? He's like, I speak to one person. I speak to my wife every time I broadcast. For me, that's my homie Danny Boy, my longtime best friend from kindergarten. He was my bodyguard. I said that
Right.
to him when I was back home. Alejandro, he's like, cool, man. I've never seen royalties for anything that you've done. You're talking to me the whole time. I've never seen royalties, bro. But that's so special. You're exactly right. And I want to use that point because we were talking yesterday, and it's the messaging, broadly speaking, of Democrats that's falling short, you think, in trying to reach the individual when it comes to specifically our lived experience, Latino men, right?
Right.
We saw what happened in 2024, man. So speak on that. What are they doing that's not connecting right now? Where are they falling short?
Yeah. So I do want to answer that, but real quick, do you mind if I ask what your dad did for a living?
He was a entrepreneur. He was a sober living home director. He started
Yeah.
in banking when I was young, so he made a little bit of money. But I did know that side of my dad. I knew the dad that got sober at 5 years, decided to start his own business and started the sober living home for men. There's a lot of tangents here. He was 37 when he stopped drinking. I was 37. He was 41 when he started Serenity Retreat. I'm 41 when I started Nick Valencia News. He had that entrepreneurial spirit, Alejandro.
Yeah. And it's ironic, or not ironic, but I'm sure. So a lot of my grandfather's work and trainings came from the learnings of Delancey Street in San Francisco, which is specifically drug rehabilitation centers. And so there was a lot of times that you would find in the movement that you had people who were coming out of rehab who were hiding out from the cops because they, you know what I mean? And that those were the people that were doing the work. And so I just thought it was important to identify that those trainings, my grandfather, and I'm sure your father understood that and saw those 12 steps. The story of self it's part of the 12-step program. Right. And so I'm
I
sure
never
that
made that connection, man. Thank you for that gift.
absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, look, I think that
So cool.
it's not just Democrats that I think people, it's the nonprofit groups that are out there trying to talk to people, and they have these $1 million budgets that are trying to talk to people. And think that they forget who they're talking to. How are you going to take home $350,000 a year and expect to reach somebody who can't make their payments,
Thank you.
right? And so I do believe that the area we're talking about is probably men our age, Latino men our age. And I'll say this, when I'm talking about the men, I'm speaking specifically about Latino men because this is what I know best, who I am,
Correct.
what I
Yeah,
can identify.
exactly.
So, yeah, I don't want to say men and think I'm being generalization of black men, Asian men, and so forth, but Latino men specifically. I think it's really between the age of about 29, 55. Look, 18 to 29-year-old Latino men are churning out in record amounts in voting. They're understanding, they're engaged, they're learning so much, they have access to so much information and pods like this that are giving them real information, not the diluted stuff that people got, right?
Right.
Uh, and I think that a lot of times when they talk with them specifically about the economy, they're trying to find what are the key words. Is the key word this? Is the key word that? And the problem is what you're saying. The problem is you're talking to them about minimum wage. Hey, the minimum wage is this. We want to make sure your employer does this, employer does that. And I know that I have my own business or trying my own business. You're doing your own business.
Yeah.
I know a bunch of guys who have car shops, tire shops, a kiosk at the mall. They sell phones, they sell shirts, right?
Yeah.
They'll do whatever. They're not looking to work for somebody else. They're entrepreneurs. Now, would you talk to the entrepreneur to inspire them, engage them, and reach them about the minimum wage you're going to pay them?
Nope.
Oh, you wouldn't go to Wall Street and say, hey, you guys, here's the minimum wage we want to give you all instead of what your stock trades are going to be. People would laugh you out of town. And here we are paying tens of millions of dollars to people to try and figure out this word. And the reality is we need to talk about things that are actually tangibles for these people. How do we help them get set up, right? Like a lot of these guys, they're getting cash and not realizing if they had an LLC, they could write off the new sponges, the new brooms, all the electric, the gas, and all those types of things.
I think, taking from my lived experience and my industry, people don't do right until they have to, which is why I have a job, right? And so
Right.
it's almost like, why hasn't Democrats messaging evolved? Why don't they see the $3.2 billion GDP that Latinos put into our country? Why don't they see the skyrocketing percentages of Latinas, Latinos starting businesses? And rather than look at us as somebody who is a janitor or a blue collar worker, talk to us about economics. Instead, they frame everything, it seems, like in this prism through immigration, and then you get to these corporations, and I've never thought about race as much as I have than being an adult, because all of a sudden I am free to be whatever I want in LA, but then I get to the corporation and I'm a Latino first. I'm not just Nick. And then I get talked at, right? Or we get talked at. Where is the disconnect? You're a community organizer. You're out there literally boots on the ground, talking to people, coming up with really strategic, calculated messaging through Galeo when you were there, the Loteria cards. I loved that messaging. Where is more of that? Why aren't we seeing more of that?
Well, one, I think, is a big reason on people they choose to hire. They hire people who consume more overhead than actually hiring the people to do this. You've had Chuck Rocha on before, and I'm sure he's
Yeah.
spoken with you about this before. What is this thing? Brown Consultants, right? It's reality. We there's you hear these budgets of millions of dollars spent in Latinos, all this, and then you actually look at it. It was Latino messaging, and a lot of it was just translated. But as far as the work, it did not go to a lot of Latino funding. That $1 million did not go to Latino consultants. That Latino did not go, and it's the reality.
I'm going to put people here on game. What I've learned in the last 11 weeks is somebody asked me how I've been so successful, how we've been so successful in this space. And I equated it to the scene in the Sandlot. Do you know like how Benny and the homies are chilling at the Sandlot and they got their, jeans rolled up. They're playing for the love of the sport. Then here comes those guys in the full jerseys with the nice bikes, and they're the nice kids in the suburb in the neighborhood. And it's the juxtaposition is right there. Here's the kids that are playing for the love of the sport, trying to figure it out and playing because they want to. And here's the kids that are coming in to look like, I don't know, to play the part, you know, to like not
Well, they
be
have
as
all the money.
organic with it, right? I don't know.
They have the
That's what I
money.
have
They
on
have
my
the
mind.
cool gloves and the cool gear, and that's a lot has happened. That has happened with organizing. There's a lot of groups that have a lot of cool gear, and guess what? They're not organizing. Organizing takes guts. It takes it takes guts. It takes the ability and sometimes to sacrifice so much more for the people to have a little bit.
Mm.
Now, I do think that it did get out of control, right? There were people who were way underpaid and overworked, and I do think that there has to be a balance. I also think that if you're looking to make a huge profit in your life and own a second home and retire early, maybe nonprofit business is not where you should be. We need to have the guts to do it. We have to be able to risk it all in order to win it. You know, when you think about unions and what made them so strong, and you've probably heard this before. Whenever there's a strike in the states, and these people say, "Well, what would they do in other countries if they were to strike?" And you're like, obviously, you're not well aware. Do you know what happens in France when they go on strike? The construction workers, the trash workers, all the waitresses, the police, fire,
Yeah.
everybody strikes.
Yeah.
Not just one little group over there in the corner. The entire country shuts down. In Ireland, what happened? Nothing moves. The beer trucks don't move. Nothing. And then things are resolved. And so we need to bring that to our organizing, the kind that says, look, if we risk it all and our funder doesn't pay us, we're going to do that because we have to be more than this moment. And I think a lot of people are afraid because we've kind of corporatized organizing. We've successfully corporatized it.
Do you do you think that we even haven't one of the things I asked Chuck Rocha and Mike Madrid, and this isn't baiting, and I got shit for asking this question, man, but I'm gonna ask it. Do you think that we're even having this conversation if the Democratic nominee wasn't a woman and a black woman? Because I think that there's a it's not singular to our community, but there is a colorism problem. There is a misogyny problem, right? Like there's some things that I learned, as great as my father was, that I've had to unlearn as a husband, like
Right.
to be a good one, right? To be a good partner. And so I wonder what your take is on it. I know we're like, we're missing the messaging. We should be talking to the entrepreneurs. We should be talking to the white collar Latinos. We should be talking to the people that are looking for privileges, not the other way. But is
Yeah.
it, how much of this, are we even having this conversation if it isn't Kamala Harris and if it's Joe Biden or some other white man or somebody that they could see themselves voting for?
So I look, I think that, and an example I'll give in my own experience is I have a daughter, and uh, I had to learn she doesn't have to hug everybody. If she doesn't want to hug somebody, she won't. Now, when you and I grew up, you hugged everybody, bro.
Yeah. Yep. Yep.
You didn't miss anybody. And so with my mother, I had to be like, Mom, she just is not her thing. Like, we have to respect her space and her body. My mom was not comfortable with it, but kind of got it and respect it. But you could see she was not happy about it. And I think that there is some of that has to happen in our community. Let's just be
Hmm.
honest, where we have to say, hey, look, our kids are not going to hug every single person if they don't. It's their body autonomy. And I get that you were raised different and you raised me different. And if we don't start doing that somewhere, it's never going to be different. And so there's some of that I think has to happen in a real way. I do think that people, while there was a lot of this about misogyny and colorism, and I do think it was across, multiple
Yeah, it's not
communities.
specific to
Yeah.
Latinos. I'm not throwing our
But I
community
think,
under the
yeah, no, no.
bus.
I do think that this was much more about immigration. I think you
Mhm.
had these white soccer moms that said, you know what? I'm willing to risk my body autonomy because I'm afraid an immigrant's going to kill me. I think there was a lot more of that, but that it was easy to look at these one or two points like that. But if you look across the board, I think there was a lot more people who said, look, I get this could cost me more money, but I'm really afraid of immigrants being here. And they use the term illegal. As we see, it has nothing to do with that. It has always been immigrants that they are afraid of.
Yeah, it's
And
equivalent to a misdemeanor, man. To treat them like criminals is just,
it,
violent
it's the
criminals at
same.
that.
It's like a speeding ticket, right? And
Not in
so,
Trump's
like,
America, not
yeah,
right now. Not in this, not with immigration. The messaging on that point, Alejandro, was so good. It was so well done. The Lake and Riley Act. You had that the white Georgia college student, murdered, by this terrible man who was here illegally, but that was used as this sort of political,
it's, that's
politics,
that's
man.
where an example of where Democrats messed up. They stayed quiet. Well, the truth is that had nothing to do with an immigration status. That had to do with violence against women,
Yes,
which is a much
a
bigger
sick,
issue.
perverted man, and the
Yep, a
violence
much
against
bigger
women that we need to
issue.
speak out on.
Yes, and we need to identify that there are things that have nothing to do with race that happen in every community across the world because people are sick. The individual is sick. I don't believe that because you believe this, you believe that. I think that is a mental thing that belongs to an individual. Um, I think that that's where we have to say things like, if you were to deport everybody, would violence against women stop? Not at all. So these things are not real, and I think that's why when you go to it, I think what you saw was so many more people who were willing to say, "I'm willing to give up something." You know what? It almost feels like a Marvel movie where they're like, the only way to protect the planet is to get rid of people we think could possibly be bad actors. Wait, what? Yes, if we just get rid of the people who we think could possibly be bad, then actually the world is safe.
Well, that is the
But
black and white thinking that's gotten us into trouble, and
right,
not taking into consideration that good people do bad things all the time, and bad people can surprise us, right? And
right,
do some amazing, amazing things.
right.
What's next? What's 2026 look like? More immigration, more stuff on, coming after, they're coming for your jobs, more detentions. I mean, we're seeing the detention infrastructure grow and grow by the state. The privatization of these detention facilities is clearly, the profit margins are going through the roof. Is immigration just going to continue to be the issue for the next 2, 4, 6 years?
So look, I mean, here's the thing, right? And I think this is where the education that a lot of people think isn't important is super important. You've been doing this a long time. You remember when they were Civic Corps,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And they were private prisons, which underneath, no one read the fine print. They also did detention centers
Yep.
for youth and immigrants, right? And so they've rebranded to whatever their new name now is because they keep wanting to do the same work, you know, and I
It's
really
like
do. I think that
Blackwater going to X. Remember that happened? The rebrand. Oh, all of a sudden it's a
that-
new thing. No, it's
that
same stuff. More of the
we're
same.
here and we have so much money, we're just going to paint everything a new color. Um, I do think there's a lot of that's happening right now. I do think that the private detention centers, the jails, the private prisons, all of them. I think when you look into it, I wouldn't be surprised if we find out that they're actually also the ones behind what is it, charter schools, right? Like
Mm,
it's all the same economy, right?
mm.
That we all know that is used to circumvent helping low income communities and those who are most fortunate, and really about criminalizing them and making them stock, the increase of stock, a commodity that increases stock trade. Whether you put them in a youth detention center, a immigration detention center, or a prison, that body is now a commodity and no longer the plight that they see it. We're seeing it with homelessness,
It's a
right? We're
business, Alejandro. It's a business. That's why it's
100%.
broken intentionally, because it's so profitable. Why fix it if so many people are getting rich off of it? When you could privatize things, when you have nonprofit for profits that are housing undocumented migrant children, and taking home millions of dollars, sometimes these CEOs lining their pockets, right? Corruption is rampant. These kids sometimes escape, or, just walk out of the facilities. There's no real tenderness or care. And they're treated like what you said. They're treated like a number. It's a commodity at this point, and it's unfortunate to see. because you lean back on, or I lean back on education and the dismantling of our education system. It's like they're targeting it intentionally. It's like the chaos that we see. Obama on paper was able to deport more people. Why was he able to do it more effective and efficiently? Because chaos and sort of this, chaotic presentation is the point. Cruelty is the point. The psychological warfare is the point. So that kids stop going to school. They self-deport. All of a sudden, the reason that they came here to get a better life for the American education system is the very reason why they're being sent back to where they fled.
Yep.
There's
And we
no other
mentioned this.
country in this world that has the Statue of Liberty. There's no other country that has made it easy for immigrants to come to their country, who has invited them, literally invited them to come to their land. And all of a sudden now we're full. It's bullshit.
Yep. And when you mentioned earlier, why is it a challenge for them, the Democrat, to message Latinos in general, is they like to hide behind, oh, they're not monolithic. And I would disagree. And you and I
Okay.
talked about this, that I do not know a Latino that will not go into poverty paying for their child's education.
They're monolithic
There's
about certain issues.
right. Entrepreneurship. No Latino wants to work for anybody. Right. And so I think that when we talk about those, we can't talk about them as workers. We can't talk about them as education, as somebody who wants the free, least available. We want the cream of the crop. We want the best. Right. And so we don't talk about that. We talk about, what is it? I had a politician who's a friend of mine, and he meant no harm in it. This is years ago. He meant no harm in it. And we asked him about, when he was running for a much lower office, asked him about youth education, something.
Okay.
And he specifically went into, what is the child Latino, the child, like, program. What's it called? Oh,
Early
it's like
start.
smart early start. Went right into early start. And we were like, I get that answers the question. And afterwards, I told my wife at the time, I'm like, I make six figures. Our kid goes to that school because it has a dual language program. Like, I'm not sure if he thought, well, you're friends, you're throwing me a lollipop question, so I want to answer it this way, or if he's like, oh, you poor Latino people. And he was a white guy, right?
You
So
know
I
what?
was like,
Head Start. That's right. Head Start early. Thank you,
that's fine. Yeah,
Shantha. Thank you
no,
so
no,
much. To some people, we're always going to be affirmative action hires. We're always going to be, what do they call it now? DEI, diversity hires, right? For some people, it's just going to be like that. And that's a shame, man, because it's part of probably why I have so much pain in my heart right now, man. No matter what I do, I feel like I'm painted with this broad stroke. And boo-hoo, poor me, right? Like I've got all this privilege and I still feel bad, but it's my lived experience. And I feel like a pioneer. I feel like I'm out here and I was farmed out to the south from Northeast LA because God knew I could handle it.
right.
And he gave me a wonderful wife and two beautiful kids to support me in this process. And I am more and more convinced of that every day since I left CNN. Because I make this joke that all I needed to do was leave CNN for my wife to be my biggest fan. And now now she's my biggest fan. She sees it. She sees the vision. She sees me as a brand, it's so cool.
It's I had the opportunity to introduce my son to Fight Club. I love the movie. I love the idea behind it. Not the craziness, but more of the breaking
Yeah,
the
sure.
system.
I like Fight Club too, of course.
And he talks about, you know, the only way to be free is to let go. And sometimes it's not you who's ever going to let go. Someone has to do you the favor and let go of you. It may take you to realize they did you that favor, whether it be professionally or whether it be, I have friends that are girls and guys that are like, man, this person, I'm like, dude, thank God you broke up with them now until like another 6 months you had real invested time in this, right? And the same thing with work. I've been let go. I've had things, and I do. I think Stephen Colbert said it best. He learned to appreciate those worst things that have happened to us.
Oh
Because
God, I
those,
cried. Don't make me cry, man. Like I'm a
and he's
crier.
right.
When he talked about if we are to be grateful for our life, we have to be grateful for all of it, even the bad. Yeah. Oh God.
Then I'm there. Look, I quit
Yeah.
drinking in 2002. I was 25 when I quit drinking.
Amazing.
And
Congratulations.
there are so many things oh man, I would have undone. But if I hadn't, I wouldn't have my two beautiful kids. I
Yeah.
would not be where I am. There would not be the opportunities and the people I've met and the moments I've had in my life to make an actual impact in individuals' lives. Not in the movement. Yeah, sure, I've won a few campaigns, whatever. But the truth is, it's the one on one people that you've seen who are members of Congress, who are teachers that you remember. I remember when you were an eighth grader. I remember when you came and saw me. I remember when I did your presentation. I remember when I was your mock witness in law school, right? And now you're a lawyer. I remember these things, and those things are more important to me now than any of the things I could have undone.
That's the testimony. That's
Right.
that's the vision of things happen for us, not to us.
Yep.
That's the
Absolutely.
perspective that I had yesterday meeting with the family of Mario Guevara, who's like, our dad is not here. That is where he sits for dinner. You're here for dinner. That chair is empty.
Yep.
And things happen for us, not to us. I so appreciated this conversation. I just saw our next guest join here. I end every interview with asking our guests, is there anything that I haven't asked you that you think is important to know or anything that you'd like to talk about or plug? Now's your chance, Alejandro. What a wonderful
Uh,
conversation.
look, I just think it's important for us all to have these conversations with our family members. And I don't mean in the cheesy way where you're like, oh, I can't believe you did this. But in the moment where you pull them aside, you're like, look, dude, you're kind of being racist. You're being a little bit of a bigot. Now, I know you don't think it and you think bullshit, all this and all that. I just want you to know that you're kind of being a racist. You're
Hmm.
kind of being an asshole. You're kind of being misogynistic. You can be masculine. It doesn't have to be toxic. You can be masculine. It doesn't have to be toxic. It's okay. So I think those are the things that we have to do, but not in groups where you call people out, but more of where you could break it down one on one. And if they choose to accept it, they do. If they choose not to, that's fine too. Your role is just to identify and say, hey, it's a different world, brother, sister. We're in a different place.
Praise publicly, criticize privately. I love that. Try to each one teach one, focus on the individual. There's so many nuggets that we took from you. Alejandro Chavez, how can we follow you? How can we catch up with you? Where can we see your work?
Yeah, I mean, you could always. Now I'm on Substack, so that's great.
Me
So
too.
it's some fun here, right? But I'm mostly on IG, your underscore Chavez, most stuff there. And look, I try to be everywhere. So please reach out. There's plenty of ways to reach me in social, and I'm always down to help out any way I can.
Alejandro Chavez, you could drop off. Thank you so much for taking the
Thanks,
time
brother.
with Nick
Appreciate it.
Valencia News. So grateful to have that discussion. We're meeting Chavez family members one by one. First going to the Central Valley. Alejandro was actually out here in Georgia until about 2 months ago, and then he moved back out west. And, you know, here we are having this conversation. We want to join now. We want to wrap up the show and finish it with a conversation with Joel Cavazos. He's the first guest that we have that's returning to the show. And when he was back last time, or when he was here the first time, Cavazos, right here, he ruffled some feathers, Some people had some feelings about Joel. He's, with all sincerity in my heart, he's one of my very good friends. He's a great guy. He speaks his mind. There he is. What's up, man? How are
Hey,
you?
what up? How are you, Nick? I'm good. I'm good.
Oh, dude, it's so good to see your smiling face, man. Where are you? Are you in Mexico? Are you in
I'm in.
Texas?
I'm in South. I'm on the border right now, South Texas.
Okay, you're in South Texas.
Yeah.
Joel Cavazos is a guy that needs no introduction to this show. He was our first guest on Nick Valencia Live, and he came out swinging, man. He came out with a bang. It's still our most watched show on YouTube, and we want to have these conversations with conservatives or people that may not be fully progressive because we can,
Right.
because we have the opportunity to. So you talked a lot about immigration last time. I want to get your perspective this time, though, on what I don't know how much of the conversation you heard with Alejandro Chavez. He's the grandson of, or one of the grandchildren of Cesar Chavez. We were talking about the missteps in Democratic messaging. One of the big points that he made was that Latino men are being talked at and talked down to. And rather than talk about minimum wage and immigration, they want to hear about the economy and how they can grow their small businesses. Where have Democrats fallen short for you in your messaging? And do you find any merit in that argument?
Yeah, I think just the whole concept of like talking to a group of people as if they're all the same. I think whether it be Mexicans, Latinos, blacks, Asians, whites. I think that's just a mistake, period. You know what I mean? I think that the whole thing of being like, oh, the Latino vote or the black vote is just so disrespectful because, I mean, there's millions and millions and millions of us, and we all have different perspectives on life, and we all have different lives, and we've all chosen different paths, and we've worked really hard at whatever our path is. And I think to be put into a group saying like, hey, we need to talk to this group, I think, but that's kind of like where politics is at now. And I think that's why politics has become kind of like what it is now, which is just a mess because everyone's trying to still group people. They were trying to group us with the blacks for the longest time, like the Latino vote and the black vote. They wanted us to all be the same. And I think it's crazy that it took until the past 8 years to realize that Latinos are not black people and black people are not Latino people, just like Asians aren't and just like whites aren't, and it's like, and then even then, like ethnic whites or whites that just migrated here or whatever, like throwing them all into the same boat as if they're the same person. And you have one person whose family's been here for 300-400 years, and you have one person whose grandparents just got here, 20 years ago. So
you being from South Texas, how long has your family, like how many generations does your family go back in the country?
On my father's side, I'm first generation. So my dad's from Mexico. My grandparents are from Mexico. On my mother's side, they're Tejanos through and through they've been Tejanos for like since before Texas was part of the Union. So
like 7-8 generations. I mean, they're going way back. Yeah. And
back
a lot of
until when
people don't realize that, like South Texas is the Ellis Island in a lot of ways for Latinos, for Mexicans. A lot of my family came through in South Texas, and I had a grandma that lived just outside of Dallas, my grandma Lolita, my dad's mom, and so that perspective is really, it's really, really, there's a lot of conservatives in South Texas. And I wanted to get your take on this because you're a man with a lot of influence and you have a very successful business. Is there something within Latinos that makes us have this entrepreneurial spirit? And how do you see that impacting the politics of your peers?
Yeah, I feel like the further you get away from, like the more generations that as a Latino that your family is American, the more you are American without even if your grandparents and your parents and all of them speak Spanish. Because like in certain areas of South Texas, a lot of my family doesn't. I speak Spanish because I have one grandparent and a father was from Mexico, right? But a lot of us over here didn't speak Spanish because for the longest time, a lot like the Italians.
They used to beat the kids in school who spoke Spanish, man.
Yeah, but not only that, it was more like the story that I get from my family is like a lot like the Italians in New York and stuff is that like it was more like, hey, like assimilate, like, we're in this country now, like don't speak Spanish. They might judge you, they might look down on you. So why, if you can kind of like, kind of like be passing, then just pass, So a lot of
this makes me think of what somebody told me yesterday is that you're not really American until you hate where you come from. Like, do you think that that's real?
Nah, I think that nowadays
in the
it's just hard
spirit
to
of
be American.
assimilation and stuff?
No, I mean, I think that you should. I mean, just 2 days ago, I sent you a meme of a lady in Mexico who was getting into a fight with a lady who had a white lady who had their dog and it was peeing on the concrete, and the Mexican lady said, "Hey, learn to speak Spanish. You're not in America. You're in Mexico." So, I mean, it's the same everywhere you go. We're gonna America's gonna push American stuff, and so that's just what it is. You're not gonna go to China and people are just gonna just be happy that you're trying to speak to them. They're gonna want you to learn Chinese, and you're gonna need to learn Chinese if you're gonna want to, like survive. So, but I do think that like back to the original question is that like I think that like now that I have like multiple businesses, some here in the US and a couple that are like thriving in Mexico. And
yeah,
I'm like
you're doing great.
I'm in the process now of like renting a spot and then trying to look to like buy a spot, getting my dual citizenship and kind of like starting to do more business in Mexico because I mean, Mexico's booming. It's no longer a third world country for anyone who thinks that it's just so hard for people to make it in Mexico. It's literally not. And it's probably just as hard here as it is there. The money's different, but the life is a little simpler. And so like, a lot of the times the reason it's so hard in America to live is because we have so much stuff in front of us that makes your, your ego want more than you actually need. Your eyes are hungrier than your stomach is, and, but back to the question is that like, yeah, and you go to Mexico and a lot of people in Mexico, I mean, you see a lot of people that have jobs and all of that stuff, but a large portion of Mexican and Mexico people are have their own little small business, whether it's
Yeah, they're hustlers, man.
selling,
They start young.
tacos, or they're selling gorditas, or they have like a little place where they have like esquites or like elotes, or like they were thrifting and they're at the local flea market, or they're making zapatos, or they're making, you know what I'm saying, colchas, or little trinkets for each city or whatever. And so a lot of people, like I told you the other day, is that like when I'm doing, I do music distribution. And so when I'm dealing with Americans and dealing with American contracts and American artists, whether they're Latino or black or white or whatever, um, a lot of the times they don't really understand business. And so I'm having to do double the work, which is basically like pitch them on the idea of the contract, and then also explain to them how contracts and how actual math and profits and everything works, as opposed to like in Mexico, a lot of the artists that I'm working with down there, a lot of the businesses that I'm working with down there, I can basically send them a contract, and by the time they read it and get back on the phone with me, they're saying all the things that I would normally have to explain to an American. So they're a lot more business oriented. And because of that, in South Texas, where basically everyone down here is either owning a business or contract labor or,
Right.
you know, or whatever, or back and forth to Reynosa or Matamoros or Rio Bravo or whatever, even all the way up to Laredo and Nuevo Laredo. And you know, we have the fast highway here to get to Monterrey and China. And so a lot of the people that are here are like self-made, and they're first generation, or first, not even first generation, they're from Mexico. And so that's the reason you get a lot more conservative down here, I think, is because the people down here just aren't used to hearing the whole like, hey, we need help, or hey, we need this. It's kind of like, oh, everybody's got a tia or a tío who didn't make it across. Everyone's got a tia or a cousin or a little sister who got deported because they were doing something wrong, or they got arrested and then they realized they weren't citizens. They had to send them back. And some of them pay to come back. Some of them don't. You know what I mean? Some of them, you know, I have stories of friends who were coyotes, and they'll tell you stories about all the different stuff. And, you know, the whole thing is that, you know, after a while, the coyotes stopped being American. They started doing Mexicans. That way, when everyone gets caught, and just kind of, there's no one really to charge. It was all these different rules and all these different things that happened. So I think that's the reason why you see South Texas being more conservative, you know?
Do people, are they surprised when they find out that you're more conservative? I mean, it's like,
Down here, no. I mean,
well,
dude,
but you travel around a lot though, Drophy. You're always on the road, you know, and like that's, I think that's what I'm getting at, is that like there is this surprise, I think, for a lot of people right now in this atmosphere that Latinos could support what's going on out there. But there are people like you who think, like you told us last time, this is like a sort of overcorrection from what you see as broken policies under Biden, and the pendulum is swinging right as this
right.
overcorrection.
I
What
mean,
do you
you get
tell
it. Like,
people?
if I get it when I'm talking to somebody in the big city, in the big blue cities. Like, if I'm in LA and I'm talking to somebody, I'm very rarely gonna talk. People that are talking about the issues are going to be on the left side. People that are quiet about the issues, usually those are the people that are like, yeah. It's just like kind of like whenever you were like, oh, the people that were like voting for Trump in New York or LA or whatever. I mean, they're not the type to run around and tell everyone that, right? They're not like MAGA, hardcore MAGA. They're just like, yeah, we don't really mess with any of these, you know, policies on the left side. And I think we're going to go with this other way, right? Or a lot of people remembered a better time and an easier time to make money. And so they kind of like went with that, right? The economy, which is,
And that's
you
what I
know,
was going to ask you, Joel. Economically, are you happy where things are going right now? Like, are you okay with what you see? The easiest example is prices in the grocery store. You know, we haven't seen gas shoot up or anything like that. But are you satisfied with the economy right now?
well, I mean, I'm a realist. So it's like, okay, it's been 8 months, you know, like, I mean, it takes time, right? I mean, that's the whole thing about politics, is that it's a giant, no matter how much you like one side or the other, it's still a big scam. I mean, how is anyone supposed to fix anything? How is anyone supposed to fix anything in 4 years of some, like, you can't, like, it's like trying to turn a giant ship on a dime. It doesn't work. It takes time to turn a ship. You know, even when you're in a plane and you're flying, you realize like, wow, we've been turning this plane for like 10 minutes as we're coming into land, right? So it's like things take time. So right now to say, oh, am I satisfied or dissatisfied with the economy, would be just, you know, I'm moving forward, and things could be tight or things could be good, whatever. I happen to be
You
in a very
haven't seen it
fortunate.
one way or the other sort of
I'm just
thing.
in a fortunate position to where I make pretty good money to where like it's not going to bother me as much as it would bother anyone else. But I from going to the grocery store and looking at stuff, the certain things are down, right? Eggs and stuff is down, but now beef is up, right? So it's like, hey, maybe we have to, back then you couldn't eat as many eggs. You had to eat more beef or more chicken. Now you might have to eat more eggs and eat more beef. But I mean, that's all like, that's just stuff on the surface. I mean, how much does that stuff really actually matter, right? Like it doesn't, to me, that's not something to get mad about or whatever. Things are going to go up and down, even in the greatest economy in the world. There could be a salmonella outbreak in chicken, or there could be you know what I mean, E. coli outbreak or whatever.
Listeria and kale or
And
whatever.
all of a sudden, it could
spinach,
be the
right?
greatest economy in the world, and all of a sudden, some cows get sick, and now beef prices go through the roof. I mean, these are things that, like, as a community, this is not what we should be focused on. We should be focused on like trying to figure out the right path, which is what I've talked to you about before, where it's like, yeah, it sucks what's going on. We had a really good thing going on for the past uncountable years, right? Which was like a couple 100,000 Latinos, couple 100,000 Mexicans made it into this country, and they would have kids, and they had birthright citizenship, and they were able to do all of these things and live here and create a life, and all the things that everyone's saying, like, oh, these people are just trying to create a life and doing all of this. And then a majority of the country voted for Biden, and they decided to just basically let the dam down and let in, 8 to 12 million people and completely flood our infrastructure and flood everything. And they kind of, as I would say, they burnt the trap up. They burnt it up. They made it hot. They made the block hot.
What I will give you merit on, because I don't think it was just Biden, but I will give you merit on, and this is something that I haven't really spoken about. Rachel, my wife, has heard me say it, but if there is any merit that I can give people about the difference now in the last handful of years of the type of people that we've seen come across. I've covered immigration and the border for 20 years. I've lived in El Paso for weeks at a time, like 2 months during family separation. I've gone a lot. I have context of the different stages and years that I've seen the border. Back when Title 42 ended, we saw a massive influx of Venezuelans. And when I came back from that trip, and even while I was there at the trip, I remember saying to myself and to my producer, there's a lot of young Venezuelan boys, teens, with neck tats and that look kind of shady, you know?
Right.
And I didn't really speak up about it. I didn't make a thing about it. When I did my reporting, I reported the scenes. I reported the party atmosphere where those Venezuelans were. I reported the quiet scenes where the people were in the train station waiting for the process. Fast forward now, Joel, 3 years later, and I'm in Utah, and 3 different teen girls, Latinas, undocumented, told me in different parts of the city that one of their biggest problems right now is how they're getting come on to by Venezuelan teen men, boys.
Right.
And so I don't know if there's a through line there, but if I'm speaking and moving in good faith and giving you and conservatives any sort of merit, there's that. Something has changed. Do I buy that it's Biden's fault? No. Do I think that the system is broken intentionally because people financially profit, like what we were talking about with Alejandro Chavez? Yes. I think that to say do it the right way and the rule of law is really dismissing the actual difficulties of the barriers that are intentionally put in the way of the individual who's trying to quote unquote do it the right way. And so they're going to do it the wrong way and play the game. And you know this, man, like you've done dirt in your past. So have I. It's part of the game. Okay, I'm going to do this. People got to catch me. And that's what they kind of chalk it up to. Do you see any merit in that?
I mean, I think, well, different parts of the question. I think, well, if you're going to talk about the Venezuelans, you have to talk about Maduro emptying out all the jails and sending them all up here, right? I mean, hundreds of thousands of people in caravans to come up here, which were all people that were like actual violent criminals, right? Like
it wasn't all of them. That's what conservatives latch on to, and all of a sudden,
no, it wasn't. I'm not saying it's all of them, but there was a couple 100,000 of them that were released out of the jails. There was a chunk.
I saw some of those folks, right? Is probably what
So back before, you were getting, some people that were up to no good here and there. But back before, when, like I said, we had, uncountable years of it just being like a pretty easy system of people kind of like sneaking across and starting a life. Those people, for the most part, were looking to start a new life of good, right? And now you have a giant influx of people that, of course, you have the people that are coming over to just do good, right? And make enough money to feed themselves here and send money home. But in that mixture, you had a giant influx of people that are here to do no good, right? I mean, they're even talking about it Ed
And
Calderon,
see,
the Ed Calderon that I was sending you the
right.
interview of, right? Like he was talking about how even in Mexico right now, the Tren de Aragua is like starting to like set up shop in Mexico in certain little pueblitos and stuff, and like it's a different thing, right? And they're kind of like
With
all
this
over.
idea that the migrant has become so much more violent, like I'm not willing to give that statement merit. I can
No,
see that a couple
humans
more people.
humans period are more violent. Americans are
You think
more
just
violent.
generally now in today's
I mean,
culture?
yeah, in today's culture, I mean, dude, I mean, we were talking about this the other day, how like, you know, in the 50s and 60s and 70s, I mean, how it was rare to see like actual killing in movies, and if it was one smoking gun, and then now you have every movie's mass murder, every show is some type of scary movie
But then
that's
this
killing.
is this is part of, I think.
Every video game is that since the early 90s, rap has become, which is what I'm involved in, has become like basically only about murder, right? And so
Right,
it's
but
like
like the murder rates were more, right? This is part of the problem, right? It's like we see these and the murder rates are not what they were. The violent crime. I remember looking behind my shoulder in Los Angeles growing up,
right.
man, and like all the gangs
That
and
was
just
LA
the
though. That
violent
was
murder
LA. Now
rates.
now it's yeah, I mean, growing up, it's like, Channel One, right? You had Channel One in your did y'all have Channel One?
Yeah.
Right? Okay, like Channel One, being from South Texas in a small town of 400,000 people, Corpus Christi, Texas, it was, we had Channel One, and we would see like the big cities like LA and Chicago and San Antonio had like the big violence. I think that maybe it might have trended downwards in the big cities, but I think like as far as like it bleeding into like rural America, it's now more, right? It seems like more because those were things that you just didn't necessarily see everywhere. You
People are
only saw
voting
them.
on that fear. People are voting on the idea of that, encroaching on them or taking these examples and saying, okay, the migrant is violent. The migrant kills, young college girls like Lake and Riley there, right? Like it sort of becomes this
I mean, they did, but I mean,
narrative.
what everyone says is true. It's like, yeah, for every migrant that killed some girl, there's a a crap load of Americans that also murdered and killed a girl, right? So
Right.
it's,
Right.
but that's not. I think on that's also like a, hey, you did it, but I can do it, or hey, look what they're doing or pointing. I don't think any of that is relevant to the conversation, anyways, right? Like I think that it's that's gonna happen. You're gonna be able to say, "Hey, look what you did. Look what I did." We're gonna be. That's the whole point. We're everyone's talking in circles right now, right? Like everyone's just like, "Oh, well, the migrant crime's up." Well, not really. There's more migrants. There's less violent migrants than there is Americans. Americans are violent. We need to fix this. We need to fix. We need to, and it just becomes this giant like hamster wheel that we're just like running around in all day, right? And that's why lately, as you can see, like from my Substack, where like 2 years ago I was like, it's me and you talking, I was like taking one point of view into where now I'm just like, you know what, like all of y'all are fucked up, like the whole and both sides are fucked up. You know what I mean?
And that's why
Like
people are turning away. That's why they're not participating, right? Like what I've learned in these last 11 weeks is that rigorous honesty and authenticity, no matter what it is, showing up as yourself is what people want. They don't want you to perform what you think they want. They want you to just be upfront and tell them so they could hash it out themselves, right? And we're
right,
getting this really performative politics where people are turning off and they're turning away. And
yeah,
I have you on because I really enjoy your perspective. There's people I know on that are watching this that they don't, but I feel like I don't want to go after the Trump voter. I find your perspective interesting, or the Trump supporter. I find it more beneficial to try to go after the people that are not politically engaged right now. People that are
right.
so disillusioned with the system because they feel like they're lied to. They don't know who they could trust. They feel like, people are just talking at them. That's who I'm trying to reach, I think, at this point. That's where I've evolved. Is
That's
there
on both.
anyone out there? Go ahead, sir.
That's on both sides. I mean, both sides have. I mean, that's, I mean, I don't know if it's a fact, but everyone seems to be in agreement that like the left and the right have their extreme sides, but 80% of the left and 80% of the right tend to like kind of agree on a lot of stuff, right? But no one's really talking to them. Everyone's just talking to the people on the extreme, the people that are like, every migrant's got to get the hell out of here. And then on the other side, they're like, everybody's got to have 7 different genders or whatever the talking point for today is on the left side, right? Like, and it's like, that's all you see on the news, but you realize after a while that the news is just trying to sell commercials. They don't really have anything. Like, dude, I don't even nowadays when I watch the news, I'll turn it on for like 10 minutes on Fox, and then I'll turn it in for like 10 minutes on CNN. And then like I turn it off and then I'll go like watch podcasts on those subjects. And then I'll watch like a liberal one if I can find one. There's not very many. And then I'll watch like a conservative or like some type of like topic podcast on the other one, and then like try to get my own information from it and go from there, right? Because like if you're just going to listen to the news, they're not going to tell you. They're going to tell you whatever they want to tell you. They're going to paint whatever picture they want, you know, and it's hard to like really like filter through all of the stuff nowadays, right? When at first, you know, for a while I was like, you know, during COVID, I just decided like, let me just watch Fox because CNN was like driving me crazy with the like counter of how many people were dying and all of this stuff on the right. It was driving us all crazy, right? And then
it was hard to watch. It was hard to watch news because it was the fire hose of doom. The doom scrolling happened, right? Like I get it. We're getting coming up to time here, man, and I want to just get you at the last question. Thank you so much for joining, by the way, Joel. Is there anything that I haven't asked you? Do you want to talk about anything that you got going on? You want to plug? How can people follow you, find your work?
I mean, you can just find me on the Substack. I've been writing a bunch of like, you know, a bunch of stuff on Substack. The past couple of weeks I've been busy negotiating some other stuff, but you can always just find me. I mean, I just write about random stuff and nothing important. But I mean, if you want to hear like a opinion of somebody who's like self-made and whose family is half immigrants, half not, and who like, you know, like I tell you, there's a lot of people out there that are like, oh, like they're so mad at my take on stuff. But within the past year, I've given out over $1 million in contracts to people in Mexico. And I've had, I think, 3 people buy houses and 1 person build a house from scratch in Mexico, right? For their family, was able to give their other houses or whatever to their other family, right? And create businesses and create like long-term wealth of residual income and all of that stuff. And for people to think that just because I have one opinion or because I happen to like Trump for some of his policies and I don't like the left because some of their like a lot of their like the reason I don't like the left as much is because just a lot of their like policies that bleed into our households, like the LGBT stuff or the whatever stuff that they're doing, right? I mean, on both sides, you know, whatever. But for people to discount discount me as a person just because I believe a couple of things and not be able to go on research and see like, wow, this dude is actually doing more for people in Mexico than anyone that most people know, right? And so I just feel like I have the right to speak on stuff because I'm actually out there doing stuff and I'm helping people. And like I said, over $1 million in the past, 15 months, and we just secured another $7 million for only Latin America. And I'm not even speaking to you about some of the Venezuelans that I've given up to like $50,000, which is millions of dollars in Venezuela. You know what I mean? Like, I haven't talked. I can talk to you about how they don't even. Venezuela's so messed up right now. You can't even wire them money. Like you have like there's no banking system for them to even. They run off the American dollar. I'm like, well, what kind of money do y'all use? They're like, no, everyone just uses dollars over here. So like, if you think about it, over there in Venezuela, it's a country that is just running off the American dollar. Everyone has American dollars in their pocket because their money is so devalued, right? The people in Puerto Rico, people in Colombia that I've given large sums of money to help them, and I think that I would just hope that people could understand that I'm here and I'm actually helping, and just because some of my views are directed in a certain direction doesn't mean that I'm not helping all sides. So
Man, you help me. I really appreciate the conversations we have offline right here too when you come
Oh,
on the
one more
show.
thing, what Alejandro was saying about that, what Colbert was saying, which I thought was funny because I think Colbert's Colbert. But the first time I was ever locked up, I did a year, and I was in juvenile, and some people came through and they would bring the like Outcry in the body of the book from back in the day, and they brought another book, and the dude was always telling me the dude would come and talk to me in my cell, and he was like, you should always thank God. Like, you can't always just thank God for the good things. When something bad happens, you should always thank God for when something bad happens. And so, like, every time something bad happens in my life, whether it was the 2 or 3 times that I got cancer twice, I had 3 surgeries. Every time I've taken a big loss in money, or that I've gone to prison, or that something's happened, or a family member dies, I always thank God for it happening, because you never actually know the true butterfly effect of everything that's going on, and so you have to be thankful, because you never know there's many times that maybe, maybe I got arrested, and there was actually a time that I got arrested and I was supposed to go to my friend's house, and then they did a drive-by and the homie died, right? And so it's like, well, dang, I'm mad that I'm getting arrested, but I was supposed to be over there, and there was a drive-by and homie got shot and I could have been dead too, right? So you have to always think, you never know what's happening that's bad right now in your life that could actually be preventing something that's way worse, right? And so you're going to have to, in your mind, you should always thank God for that. So
Joel Cavazos, Trophy, music executive. Man, you got some songs that I was listening to with Drakeo the Ruler earlier. This man's got hits. If you got to go research him, Narco Wave, the biggest out there, man. Thank you so much for joining us from South Texas. We really
thank you, my
appreciate
brother.
you, man. We'll see
Love you,
from you.
bro.
We'll see you soon. I
All right.
love your rings, by the way. We'll talk later, homie.
Later.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for joining. We had 2 guests today. We had Alejandro Chavez, the grandson of Cesar Chavez. His father was the eldest child of Cesar Chavez, and he talked a little bit about what that was like growing up in the household. He was 15 when his tata died, and all the values that were instilled in him, and the vision that he has for trying to build a better future for the Latino community, focusing on individuals, focusing on small business owners, focusing on people who don't want to work for other people, but are really more concerned about the economy and the state of economics in America. Immigration, he thinks, is going to continue to be a big issue. We've heard other strategists come on and talk about that as well. Samuel Aguilar joined us recently, and he thinks 2026 is going to be all about immigration here, especially in Georgia. Even states that are not, quote unquote, border states have become border states, places like Florida, places like Georgia, places like Utah, where we were just recently. And then just in the last 30 minutes, we had Joel Cavazos. He is a conservative Latino Trump supporter from South Texas. I know some of you guys, look, I'm going to get some comments, I'm sure. There was actually, if I'm being rigorously honest, when I first did the first episode of this show, there was a founding member who paid as a founding subscriber and was so insulted that I brought on Joel as a guest, that I would platform someone like that. I saw some of the comments. Some of you guys think he's, MAGA talking points. We've heard some of these similar arguments, sure. But look, man, I think that it's our job as journalists to just see what the other side is thinking, to see what sides, wherever they stand. I don't want to platform bigots. That's where I draw the line. I'm not going to platform somebody who is openly hateful. I know that Joel is not. I know his heart, and I know that he has helped me with some of the things that he's talked about with fatherhood and his approach to life. And I may not fundamentally agree with some of the things that he talks about or his approach to life. And we let it be known, and then we move on. I think part of what has hurt the left, part of what has hurt Democrats is that Cristian Ramos also said it, is that they get so caught up in the outrage of something, right? Rather than focusing on the remedy or the solution. I think that you guys know where I stand. The stories that I'm putting out make it pretty clear that I'm trying to help the undocumented community right now. I don't believe in objectivity as a journalist. I want to make that clear. I never have. And I think objectivity is one of the things that is the great lies that we tell ourselves about journalism. My metric for success as a journalist is fairness. Was I fair? Was I able to talk to somebody who I don't agree with and be fair? I think so. I think that's part of what our responsibility is as communicators, as informers, is to go into places where we might feel uncomfortable. How many times have I been into a small rural place where I was completely disarmed by the welcoming that I got, or equally been into places where I wasn't received well, but by the time I left, they were asking for a hat. We shouldn't be so surprised about Trump's success. We all have that racist family member, friend, somebody who goes too far in their jokes or their stories, and we maybe love them anyway. I know there's people in my family who have really disappointed me over the years with their actions, with some of the things that they've decided to think were funny, or some of the issues that they decide to die, the hills that they decide to die on. When I have conversations like I just had, it reminds me that I need to lead with love and tolerance, and that I can't just be in a silo or be around people that reinforce my opinion on things. In this age and era of sport politics where we will dig in our heels if there's a capital D in front of somebody or there's a capital R in front of somebody, because we don't want to give merit to the other side. We don't want to make amends. We don't want to admit we were wrong. It's so hard to say that we made a mistake. I think that there are a lot of people right now in this country who do feel like they made a mistake, who were convinced by the messaging, who were smart people that thought that they were voting for what was best for them. As I get discouraged and travel around the country and tell all these really heavy stories, I have to remind myself that the majority of the country voted for Donald Trump, but there was a lot of people who did not vote. There was a lot of people who sat this one out, registered voters. Yesterday, when Alejandro was talking to me about the missteps of the Democrats, he was talking about a pizza that has 10 slices, and that 3 of those slices may be Republican, 7 of them may be Democrat, 20, that's 2020, 2024. 6 of them now are Democrat, 3 of them are Republican. The Republicans didn't get more votes or more slices of the pie. They got a bigger percentage, and they are choosing that, to use that to carry their narrative forward as if they have a mandate to go kidnap people. To go kidnap people. To brag about it over loudspeakers as they're leaving Terminal Island just outside of San Pedro. Even if they were joking, even if there was taunting, that is a brain dead megaphone that I want no part of. There's no brain dead megaphone here, man. I'm getting off my soapbox, but all of them are clean. Thank you guys so much for joining the show. Thank you for sticking around. I really appreciate the growth that we've seen. And thank you especially to Brian L., man. We started a fundraiser at the end of last week. Brian single-handedly funded our next trip. Next week, we're going to South Florida to go investigate alligator Alcatraz and bring you exclusive reporting from there on the ground. Thank you guys so much for joining the show. Doc BB, I love all the feedback from all of you guys. Samantha, Lydia Page. I mean, we had Kenny join the show today. There were so many people that I saw. I didn't see Mama Valencia, but I might have been talking while I was, might have been distracted while she joined it talking. I'm so grateful for you guys. This is Nick Valencia Live. We are unafraid, we are unfiltered, and we are unbought. Thanks for joining our latest edition. Have a great day on purpose.